Hey all, so this is War 4 of the season. I do intend to recreate War 3 at some point. As you may have heard me say in a previous video, I lost more than half of the recordings that war. They just never took. Fairly frustrating. But I'll get those out to you because there were some interesting things to talk about. But first off, we have our first real Captain America war, I believe. I think the only other Cap fights I had were in the off season. So we start off with this really simple Symbiote Supreme fight. Um, we probably will, like, we expect to get shocked a couple times, but that's one benefit of having Killmonger on the team because my cap is SIG 200. Any single shock that gets through is going to be instantly purified, which basically just means that as long as I'm staying on top of having some potential, I'll be fine. So you see right there, um, that was the second time we got shocked. And so technically, after throwing my special, I could trigger two shocks in a single heavy and one of them would stick. I took a small risk there, but the chance is pretty low. And Cap does have energy resistance when he's kinetically charged as well, so I just kind of figured I could YOLO it, but really probably should have parried twice after I threw that special to make sure I had two charges and then throw the heavy. That's the way to be perfectly safe. So then we have Tigra here, and this fight is where I was starting to feel that inputs were just not great. I had actually very recently restarted my iPad, so the fact that inputs did not feel great was really unwelcome. Thankfully, we do not get nailed by Tigra specials in this video because man is she stressful to face when inputs are feeling less than clean. But anyway, probably could have finished it there with the special one. Go for that just to be safe. Now, this next fight, I have to apologize ahead of time because somehow some wires got crossed in my brain heading into this one. I don't know what it is about Node 20 that does this to me, but I was thinking that I know that what it is that Nimrod just cannot have his abilities turned off by Magneto. Somehow in my head, that turned into Nimrod turns off Magneto's abilities, which is obviously very different and not at all what happens. So you're going to see some weird stuff in this one. Thankfully, I was charged there, so my special one was unblockable. Went ahead and threw it, but you can tell I haven't come out of this funk just yet. And so I've taken some damage I really do not need to as a result of it. Finally lock in here a little bit and throw that earlier than I need to. If I had been a little more dialed in and a little bit less, oh my god, what am I doing? I would have thrown another light and another medium there to try and burn through my charges and to get closer to the next bar of power, because that is ultimately what you want to do on this node. And somehow I make this mistake again. And it's right before I go over, too. So I literally just needed to parry one more time. But man, I was so on top of Nimrod last season. I really felt like I was using him as well as anyone. But this season, that is the, what, third, fourth time in a few fairly short wars that I have just completely missed the fact that I've fallen out of Eradicate and gone back into Titan, and I've thrown special twos that do almost no damage. So this fight could pretty much be over right now. If I had been handling things properly, staying on top of it, and I would have like 60% health at least instead of where we are now. But we finally throw this. This does an absolute ton of damage, and the fight is done. So, couple big mistakes there. The large one going in, where I just got completely backwards on the relationship between Nimrod and Magneto for I have no idea what reason, and then just, yeah, I need to keep track of when I'm about to run out of Eradicate and Parry more. It's not hard to do, I just need to remember to do it. So this is where inputs really started catching up with me. I have some dexes here, special ones that just, it feels like nothing is going right. I think here's the one. Tried to block the first hit and dex out of that, just dropped the block. I mean, I know timing does matter for that, but I dueled for this one. I faced Nimrod quite a bit. He shows up a lot in Battlegrounds. Pretty confident with the timing. So there, because I do consider it a little bit safer even when things are off, I did dex out at the end, but I did it with my right thumb, not my left. I find if you're trying to dex out in the middle of a special and you really cannot afford error, blocking with your left thumb and dexing with your right does help clean things up. So I'm going to try and make a note to do that for at least this whole season. It's something I know to do. I know it's safe. I just kind of fallen out of the habit. And if you're having trouble with that, hopefully that helps you as well. So we did back off there a little bit. And there we just have to go for the dex and thankfully nail it. We backed off a little bit when backup recovery triggered, just to make sure we didn't send him red, because that would have been kind of unpleasant. But this is a pretty simple fight. I mean, Cap can even handle the unstoppable. So, like, this is not quick, because basically we're relying on crits to cut through Nimrod's armor, and he has the Energize, so he has a lot of specials. But there's just not a lot of risk to it. Basically, you have to get hit by a special or two to die, as long as you just keep parry heavying. Defiance takes care of most of that. So, unfortunately, in the third war, I lost a perfect recording of this fight. Like, it literally took, I think, 52 seconds. Like, so incredibly quick, everything went right. This isn't going to be quite that, but the important thing for this, the thing that I make sure to duel whenever I take this node, is if you do not have True Strike, discipline yourself to do medium light every single time. Even if you are hitting into block. That's the number one problem, is you won't have True Strike, and you'll be doing medium light when it's actually combos, or like responding to heavies, but then you'll do a medium into his block, and then you'll end up doing another medium, he'll evade you and degen you. That's what you want to avoid. So staying disciplined with medium light is the important part. Once you have True Strike up, whether it's from punishing the special 1 or the special 2, you're pretty much good to go. It even allows you to parry Mordo freely, because how he normally punishes that is an evade, and so True Strike stops it. So at this point, I am pushing up to the special 2, just in case he decides to be particularly rude and go red. It's nice to have those indestructible charges, but I'm not too worried about that, honestly. The start of the fight, before we have True Strike, is really where all of the risk is. As long as you get him to throw that first special where you get True Strike up, not only are you in control of most of his mechanics, but also the way Killmonger tends to handle the rhythm of the fight is by constantly backing him up, and therefore it's much easier to land heavies because he's already against the wall and he can't dex out of them. So I cut the recording here to go dual maw and restart the app again, because this is the one where inputs really need to be locked on. Or locked in, I suppose. Not Falcon. So I head into it with Cap, and basically the idea here is to throw a lot of parries to try and make sure that the Petrify is up as much as possible. I should have heavy countered there, but then somehow when I go here... Yeah, I mean, Cap can technically counter it, but after that I'm sticking pretty much to re-parries, because, yeah, stand your ground is rude. So there I definitely blocked. The input just did not take. Love that. I'm pretty sure that happens again at some point. We are keeping track of how many petrifies we have, by the way. Because when we have 5, then more blocking is actually good because it will drain his power. When we're down here in the 1 to 2 range, we have to be very careful blocking because we really do not want to push him red. Another missed parry. Love that. That little red armor break call out, notice that. The skill synergy for Cap is allowing us to purify debuffs. So far, that has only applied to armor breaks, but it's important to note that if we allowed Maw to get to 20 focus and he tried to place a falter on us, that is an active debuff, and therefore Cap can shrug it. So you'll notice that I am trying to punish the special 1 in hopes of removing the unstoppable. Another missed parry, love it. But I am not heavy countering the special 1, and I am not like continuing those combos because I know that I can't deal with the evade. I can only deal with the unstoppable, so I'm coming in for a single hit and backing off, waiting for the next parry. So that fight was incredibly annoying because eating 3 combos that I don't think I should have obviously accounts for a fair amount of health. Thankfully, you can tell Cap still has over 50% left, so extremely safe counter. This I ended up doing the next day. This is obviously Hitmonkey, but on this node, Hitmonkey doesn't really synergize with it, so it's just that large prowess supercharging his specials. So basically what you have to be careful with here is don't get hit by his specials. So duel for that before you head in, make sure you have the evades down. Now ideally, your evade timing is tight enough that you're getting True Strike off of most of these because then you can end up blocking a hit, and you get True Strike and Reverb, and you get that huge attack bonus, and then Hitmonkey goes down just that much more quickly because he does not have a very large health pool. Notice that the bleeds are doing a fair amount of work for us as well here. But we don't want to push him to his special 2, and we're being very careful about the special 1, making sure that we are baiting it proactively. We're not just ready to evade it, we are actively moving around, dexing, hitting into him, ending our combos early, hoping that he'll evade it, and we're ready for it to make sure we don't even get clipped, because even getting clipped could be the end there. So then we have Apocalypse here. Solid placement, because most of the time when you fight Apocalypse, you end up blocking some of his specials, and basically if you do that even once with somebody who can't handle prowess, the next one is going to be unblockable. Because watch how 1 builds up there. Not a huge deal though, because we instantly remove it. That's why we're here with Nimrod. You'll also notice the Hard Knock Life. That makes most people difficult to use here. But it actually makes Nimrod a little bit better, because we've talked before about how he is immune to the ability accuracy reduction half of Disorient. And then because he has so much armor, as long as his opponent doesn't have some kind of True Strike or ability to crit through block, he basically has extra block proficiency from that. So you'll notice right there, I did it again. I lost track of when I was coming out of Eradicate, and threw that special 2 in Titan mode, when I could have just parried twice more for all of the reasons I just talked about, with Nimrod being functionally immune to Disorient against mutants. And then I could have thrown the special 2, and the fight would be over right now. So that is just something I really need to get on top of for the last half of the season, because it has not cost me in any of these fights thus far. Nimrod is really, really strong, but you saw it come close to costing me in that Magneto fight, and so that was a real wake-up call. I just need to lock that in. Probably need to do some duels specifically watching that, both against mutants and non-mutants, and just not have that problem ever again. So thankfully, I don't believe I have it in this fight against Professor X, because it was on my mind after that last one. Right here, this is what we want to do. You want to push Professor X over a bar of power right as his falter comes back, so that you can punish his specials and trigger it, and then he just sits there and channels and doesn't punish you. That is the safe way to do this without a House of X pre-fight. Now, if timing had worked out a little bit differently, I could have gotten a House of X pre-fight on this. That would have made it very easy to just parry and trigger the falter that way. That makes things easier, but it's clearly not necessary as long as we just deal with this. Professor X doesn't have the tactics, so we don't have to worry about any other misses. And we throw our first special 2, make sure it's in Eradicate with the energy vulnerability still up from the special 1, fight's over. So that was a fun war for me. Sad to, not bring Reed already in War 4, but really fun team. I'm glad I'm getting to use Cap. Mine is actually the only Sig 200 in the battle group, and so is perfect for fights like that Ebony Maw where the Shrug or the Petrify really matters. And he's just an absolute tank. I'm so glad that I invested in him, maxed him out. He's been amazing thus far this season and off season, and I expect him to play a big role going forward. We did end up winning this war. It was a bit of a mismatch. I think that our opponents gave up a few early and then kind of gave up overnight because they were in a different time zone. So while we were asleep, they dropped quite a few on top of each other. I think that's going to happen more now that loyalty costs are higher for potions and the revives are so cheap. If you have decided that you have lost a war, you have to really think that your attack bonus might make the difference in your placement, which for us, it very well can. Because if we end up right at the bottom of Masters or at the top of Platinum 1, like we have a couple times recently, attack bonus matters. So we're going to stay on that. But if you think that you're not going to land exactly there, then you actually have a pretty strong incentive to hold on to your potions, stop healing up, and rely on those big, cheap 40% revives, which is going to cause deaths to rise if you already think that you've lost. So I wasn't really surprised by that. I'm not judging our opponents for it. I think it probably makes sense. I wonder how that's going to shape up going forward now that we're in this new era of items. We'll see. I really hope that the inputs get cleaned up in this next update. I know that the refractor is going to be default for everyone. I am currently using the refractor. It feels good except for when it doesn't, is basically what I can say. And there were a few things in the patch notes that I read earlier today that do claim to have cleaned it up a little bit, so I hope that's true, because fights like that one against Ebony Maw are really not fun, where you know you're playing well, and you're worried that you might die anyway, because you just keep getting hit. Oh well, hope y'all's second week of the season started out well, and I will catch y'all next time, I think with the reconstructed War 3. But until then, thanks so much for watching, and take care.